Hello, and thank you for participating in our online annual discipline-specific activity. For those of you that I've not met, I'm Kaylee Malsey, the Associate Dean of School Partnerships here at Penn Highlands Community College. While I have communicated with all of you in some form or another, it is my pleasure to work with each one of you. As many of you know, we typically hold an in-person event each fall, allowing you to work face-to-face with the college faculty and our college faculty liaisons to talk about many topics, including course content, delivery methods, assessment, or research and development in the field. This event is a requirement of our NACEP accreditation. While it saddens us that this year we were unable to hold an in-person event due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our liaisons have worked hard to provide an opportunity for us to still meet the requirements in some face-to-face format. In the fall, faculty liaisons held live Zoom meetings with ACE faculty. We understand that not everybody was able to attend these meetings at the specific time, but the meetings were all recorded and have been uploaded for you to complete and view at your leisure. Supporting documents from all of these meetings are also included on the training pages. We appreciate your time in completing the annual discipline-specific activity. There is a short survey that we are asking you to complete once you have completed the training. If you have any questions regarding this training or other requirements, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me at kmalsey@pennhighlands.edu or give me a call at 814-262-3859. Thank you again for your dedication to the students and your participation in the ACE program. Thank you.
So this is the little presentation that I created for you guys tonight. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about grading and assessing papers, primarily in English 110, but it also applies to other writing courses. So if any of you are teaching other courses, you should find it at least a little bit applicable to that. So slideshow from beginning. Okay, so grading and assessing in English 110 and other writing courses. Now, I pulled this from an old syllabus, like a syllabus from 15 years ago. This used to appear in our syllabi as the standards for student papers, for essays. And I have it here because I think that there are some problems with it that you'll probably notice. So here we have the A for theme, which stands out because you notice the old-fashioned word theme. And by the way, I tried to find out where this actually came from. When it was handed to me in the syllabus, it said Temple University. I have no idea. But this is what we used to use. A theme that stands out because the writer has intelligence and some degree of original thought through what needs to be said. It develops a point logically in clear, well-constructed paragraphs. Its generalizations are supported by effective use of details and examples. It's characterized by an apt and incisive use of words. It is entirely free of mechanical and grammatical errors. The B theme, or paper, develops an interesting point with good organization and expression. It has most of the virtues of an A theme, but is marked more by competence than originality. C, for a theme with a central idea, though its development is vague and generalized, the C theme is often not seriously marred by errors in expression. In fact, it may be that's a typo, correctly expressed but trite. It may, on the other hand, be organized and fairly interesting but clumsily expressed. B, for a theme with a flimsy thesis and poor organization, its paragraphs may be sketchy parts of a list or else belong in incoherent. It will most likely have some serious errors in expression. F, for a theme with no discernible thesis, it is garbled in thought and expression. It makes serious errors in grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Sometimes an F theme is extremely deficient in only one respect. It is unusually trite, for example, or weak in grammar, diction, or substance. A theme should also receive an F if it fails to follow the assignment. Now, there are good things in here, all right, and even useful things, but what I find difficult or unhelpful about this is the generality of it. The A theme, for example, the writer has intelligence and some degree of original thought. Really? How am I supposed to assess the writer's intelligence through just reading an essay? And I don't, I just feel that this is a very, it's a very sort of impressionistic look at the development of essays. And I like to have something a little more concrete to go on. I like to be able to say, okay, if you meet this standard, this standard, and this standard, yes, it's a good paper. If you don't, then it's not. And I think it's strange too. The F theme is extremely deficient in only one respect. Generally, if a paper is well organized and clear and it has reasonably good grammar, the fact that it's trite is not going to make me give it an F. It might bring it down to a C, but it would. So although this has some interesting concepts in it, it's not really enough to go by in evaluating a paper. And this is why I really try with grading essays to provide some kind of a rubric that students can use so that they can see these are the things you have to check off. If you have these things, generally you will have a good paper. So let's look at this one next. What are the qualities of a good essay? And I divided it into basically 3 parts, although there are other elements that you might look at as well. So what's the structure of the essay? And I do tend to emphasize structure a great deal because I think it's helpful to the students to have the idea that they are planning to prove something and that they can tell what it is that they're trying to prove. The essay has a strong thesis that fits the content. The essay has clear topic sentences that support the thesis and state the main idea of each paragraph. So I do put a lot of emphasis in my teaching and in my grading on the structure of the essay. And we start with some of the simpler essay forms, as I'm sure that you do too, and move on to some of the more complex ones so that we can build those skills. Generally, I start with the narrative essay and have the students simply develop a strong thesis statement and then tell a story that fits it. And I move on to exemplification and cause-effect, in which they need to develop a structure of topic sentences that all back up that thesis. And then we get into the comparison, contrast, and the argument, which are much more complex, and of course, the research paper. All right, support. The essay has detailed, specific, relevant support that backs up the topic sentence in every supporting paragraph, and there's enough of it. And grammar and mechanics, the essay is clear and readable. Standard grammar, English grammar and usage are present. The level of formality is suitable to the assignment. Now, the highest level of formality in the course is the research paper. And this semester, I created a little PowerPoint for that too, which I just might want to show you. Because for a lot of students, an explanation of formal language is needed. They're accustomed to writing quite informally. And when they're writing personal essays, that's entirely appropriate, but it is not as appropriate when it comes to the research paper, of course. Okay. So then you look at qualities related to a particular assignment. That's a third element. The essay has to meet the requirements of the assignment for both length and content. And I do teach based on rhetorical mode. So there are certain elements of essays that relate entirely to a particular rhetorical mode. And a good example is pacing in a narrative. You don't really have pacing in the other forms of essays, but pacing, which is the concept that the events and incidents which are relevant to the point receive more of the space in the paper than the events and incidents that aren't relevant. That's what pacing is. It really applies only to the narrative. The use of sensory description or sensory detail in a description. I don't use the descriptive essay anymore, but it still remains a possibility. And since many of you, how many of you are teaching for the entire year? Your course goes to the whole year. Yeah, if you have a whole year, you would have room for that essay. In my 15 weeks, I've just run out of space for it. Causes and effects, reasonable treatment of the causes or effects in that essay, suitable organization for comparison and contrast, refutation of opposing arguments, and a thesis which states the writer's own position is in argumentation, suitable selection of examples and exemplification. Whichever rhetorical modes you're using, they're the elements that relate to that particular assignment. So those are other things that you would look for. Now, I decided just to show you, this is the guidelines documents that I give my students for the research paper. So this is what I tell them they have to do. We developed this over several weeks of classes, but this is the document that sums it all up. So it does have to be an analytical research paper. It can't just give information. That's one of the things that makes it the research paper for a college course, because that's one of the elements that it's not teaching students to draw a conclusion based on their evidence. That's over and above just teaching the process of finding material, finding facts, organizing the facts, documenting the facts. Those things are also vital. But this is the next level element in which they do need to have some form of analysis and not just give facts. So I asked them to organize by idea, not topic. It shouldn't look like an encyclopedia article or a Wikipedia article. I talk about the introduction. I tell the students not to include background all the time. Sometimes you don't need any background. It depends on the topic. And then I tell them about organizing by section and not just by paragraph. This is something that we're going to look at in our assessment this year. So you need to be ready to think about this element. And then transitional sentences and topic sentences should be in the student's own words. Now let's see here. Okay. Avoiding excessive quotation. They can't quote all the time. And then there's the documentation element. And I'm sure that all of you are in the same position that I am. This is the hard thing for most students, particularly the in-text citations. Am I right about that? They can understand having the works cited list or the references list, and they usually, almost all students manage that, but the in-text citations are tough for them because this is something that's not usually emphasized very much before you get to the college level. And my students, of course, they're high school graduates, but they haven't all taken advanced level courses when they were in high school, and they don't have very much experience with doing documentation. So this is a big deal. And let's see here, the number of sources. Okay, and then this is the grading. So this is essentially my rubric for the research paper that I want to share with you. These are the three areas that I look at, and you'll notice that there's not a number of points for each area. It's really different from the other rubrics that I use. It's a little more open-ended. In the content area, I look at the same kinds of things that I look at in regular essays, thesis statement, supporting structure, organization, the amount of support, the length of the paper, and then the documentation area. Now, the thing I'd like to point out here is this. First of all, I do deduct points for mistakes in MLA format. Now, the course syllabus does offer some leeway if you want students to be allowed to have a choice between writing their paper in MLA or APA. That is your discretion. You may do that. I require an MLA paper. I teach both MLA and APA, but I require an MLA paper in the course. But if you would like to give students the choice based on subject matter, you can do that. Okay. So it may be APA format as well. But I do deduct points when there are mistakes in the drafting of the parenthetical citations in the works cited list. I don't take in the works cited list, if something's missing, let's say that the student didn't italicize book titles, I only take off 1 point for that, for the whole thing. But I do deduct a point, and I think the students need to understand that there is a standard that they have to meet. Now, the plagiarism, I deduct a point for every instance of minor inadvertent plagiarism. So this is the situation in which you're reading the paper and all of a sudden there's Australian slang. You think, wait a minute, is this student Australian? No. The student didn't paraphrase thoroughly. Okay. And it's near quotation, maybe a few words are changed, but the passage is, and it's documented. There's a citation there, but there needed to be quotation marks and an exact quotation or real paraphrase. And that's -1 each time it happens. Now, If a paper doesn't have any documentation at all, I take off 50 points from the top. Now, I will say this, and that's out of 100 points. So that's an automatic F. And in some cases, it's a 0. A lot depends on what form does this take. If I look at it and I Google some things and I can't trace it to a particular source only, where they just copied a paper from the internet, copying the paper from the internet is a 0. That's, that's an open and shut case. The situation in which quotation without documentation or quotation marks amounts to the majority of the paper, that's also a 0. In other words, I see chunks. It's not all from one website, and maybe the first line has a couple of words changed to throw me off, but what I'm seeing is just stuff that's basically lifted from online and plopped into the paper with no documentation. That's a 0. But when I see that somebody's using sources and I can't find that chunks of things came from somewhere, but there isn't any documentation, that's an F paper. And I should tell you that in my college course, a student who earns an F on the paper for whatever reason, whether it's plagiarism or just that it's a poor paper, an F paper in the research area means an F for the course. That's in my course addendum, so the students know that that's the way it is. All right, minus 30 if there aren't any parenthetical citations. So I'm reading the paper and the student is using sources, and at the end there's a works cited, and the works cited seems okay, but there aren't any in-text citations, minus 30. So that grade starts at a 70%. And then if anything else is wrong with it, it drops further. Minus 20 for documenting only quotations. This is the one, I very rarely have to use the other two. But the minus 20 for documenting only quotes is I won't say it's common, but it does happen. And although, remember, we can tell people things, it doesn't always sink in until they've actually tried it. Almost every student understands that they need to document a quoted passage, but when it comes to paraphrases, it can be very hard to convince them that they need to document those. So that's what happens here. And I only deduct 20 points off the top for this if what I see is that there's absolutely no documentation of paraphrase, but there are plenty of paraphrases there. I see them in the paper, I'm not seeing them documented. So that's basically what I do. And then the grammar formula, if you're curious about this, you can take a look at it. This is just my own private formula. I do count grammatical errors, but I know that a lot of people don't. There are a lot of good ways to grade in this area, so I'm not going to pay too much attention to it. I do want to say, though, that the reason that I include the grammatical issues when I grade papers is that they often seriously interfere with clarity. And what I want the students to do is to develop a clear and understandable style. And I do want them also to have a certain level of formality. So when you combine all those things, then we're at the point that we're saying, well, grammar is relevant to the paper. However you want to include it, it does need to be taken into account. So what does an A research paper have? Well, it needs to have both in-text citations and a works cited or references list. So if either one is missing, this is definitely not an A paper. And every semester when I collect assessment materials, all of you, I think most of you I have worked with before, so you know how this works. You have to have sample papers, right? Do you remember that part? So when we're assessing the research paper, you're handing in a paper that you consider a very good paper, an A-level paper, a C paper, which is average, and then an F paper or a paper that is maybe the poorest one that you got. And last semester, I at the end of the year, I'm opening up the sample papers, and here was a paper that's supposed to be an A paper, and it doesn't have a works cited list. It's not an A paper if there's no works cited or references list. It just can't be. The documentation is seriously flawed in that paper. So when you're sending your graded papers to me, Just keep in mind that an A paper does have to meet all these basic criteria. It has to meet the length requirement. Now, the length requirement is a little bit flexible in the syllabus. What do I have in there? Is it 1,000 words or 1,500 words? I don't go by words. I generally require 5 pages, which is closer to 1,500 words. But whatever it is, it needs to meet it. You must have a clear and suitable thesis statement. The paper must have a logical and clear organization, clear and reasonable transitions, enough in-text citations, and a good match between the in-text citations and the works cited list. Now, you can also get into the quality of the research. You can consider the quality of the thinking in the paper and the analysis, but remember that the clear and suitable thesis statement indicates that the student took the trouble to think through the topic and reach some kind of a conclusion. It's not a doctoral level conclusion, that's okay, but that some thought went into creating the paper. So that's what the A level looks like. Now, in addition, it should be written in standard English. It should maintain a formal tone, and it should use quotations and paraphrases effectively. So quotations should be introduced and then discussed, and paraphrases should be incorporated clearly and reasonably into the argument that the student is making in the paper. Now, the formal tone is something that I've come to realize over recent years, students really need to have this explained to them. They should not be using any slang or informal usage. Try to encourage students, for example, if they're writing about children, to say children, students, adolescents, or teens instead of kids. Okay? Try to get them to say many studies have shown instead of a lot of studies have shown. Try to get them to use language that's a little level up from their ordinary conversational language. In addition, in an academic research paper, the students usually shouldn't have contractions except in quotations. And the same thing is true of second person pronouns. That is the pronoun you. Yeah. We should not see you except in a quoted passage. So and it's very hard to get students to understand that they are not addressing the reader directly as you in a formal academic paper, but they shouldn't do it. Okay. So these are the things, some of the things that you want to look for. And then the students in an A paper should also be using quotations and paraphrases effectively. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be effective. So that's basically what the A research paper should look like. Now, this is our assessment in English 110, the common assessment. How many of you are teaching English 110 this year? Who's doing? Okay. How many of you are getting an ACE visit this year? Because usually I ask for assessments from people with an ACE visit. Not this year, huh? Okay. But this is the new rubric. And what happened is that last year we declared victory in the research paper assessment. I used the same assessment for about 3 years. And last year it looked really good. We were basically, my standard is 70% in each area that's covered in this rubric, in a rubric like this. And we managed it in all but one category. And in that category, we were 1 point away. And I just thought, you know what, this is not significant. Okay. So I declared victory, and we've moved on to looking at different aspects of the research paper for this year. Now, depending on how it goes this year, if you're not up for assessment this year, you might see this again next year. So this is our assessment rubric. Is the research paper organized logically and effectively overall? If it is, that's the organization of the entire paper. Yes, for 2 points, partially for 1 point, no for 0 points. Are individual sections ordered efficiently and appropriately? So there we're looking at the sections and paragraphs in the paper. Yes, 2 points, partially 1 point, no 0 points. 3, does the paper include a suitable thesis statement? So yes, it does. Or if it's partially, the thesis is present but doesn't fit the whole paper, is weak or ineffective. No, thesis is absent, an announcement, or doesn't fit. The announcement thesis statement is the most tempting one for beginning student writers. It's the one that says, this paper is about X. And yeah, I see Jim shaking his head. No, no, that's not a good thesis. So we have to get them to move on from that. Then transitions. I'm actually still tinkering with the wording on this one, and the tinkered version will go up on the ACE website for you to look at. But basically, this is the concept that, well, does the student provide adequate transitions between the sections of the paper or paragraphs, and are there transitional words and sentences in it? And then the documentation, does the in-text documentation match the works cited page or references page? Now, this is asking about whether there's a one-for-one match. Basically, every source that the student uses in the paper should be listed in the works cited or references page. And every item in the works cited or references page needs to have a citation somewhere in the text of the paper. It can be in a sentence, it can be in a parenthetical citation, but it has to be there. So that's my final question. And I always try to include a documentation question just because this is such a struggle for the students and something that we really have to make sure that we get across to them. So, okay. Your samples. When you hand in samples there of excellent, fair, poor, or A, C, and F papers, the A and the C paper both have to have documentation. Okay. The C paper may not do as good a job with the documentation, and it may not have as good an analysis or sources, but both an A and a C paper do have to have documentation. If there's no documentation of sources at all, the paper's an F. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're handing in your samples. All right, and work with the students to get them as far as you can, to get them to do as well as you can. Okay, and that's the end of my little presentation. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yeah, this was short, wasn't it? Is there anything that you would like me to talk about? Go ahead and unmute yourselves if you want. Is there anything that you would like me to talk about in a future session that you really feel would help you? And let me just ask, is there anybody here who's teaching English 200? You are, Jim. Do you have any questions related to that?
No. I actually adapted your rubric there for the literary research paper, and I require I have it on all of my papers starting from the very beginning. And the biggest difference with mine papers are I require them to write from a critical school of thought for all of their literary research papers. So they have to write from a new school perspective or a psychological perspective or something like that. So I just build on what we do in English 110 because I taught that for years, and now Nicole does a fantastic job teaching it, and so I just build off of that and like have them level up, so to speak. But I basically use the very same rubric, and it's actually on the end. It's on the end of. I hand them a template for the paper that has that rubric on at the end of every paper. So right from the very beginning of the year, they're required to do the documentation and everything from the very beginning. It's like, I know you've been taught this, so I just expect it.
Oh, that's terrific. That sounds really good. Excellent. And I'm not sure yet what I'm doing with the rubric for English 200, but I'm not sure that you're up for assessment this year. There may be a new rubric for that too, but I haven't produced it yet. It's mostly here on campus, we don't teach very many sections of English 200 in the fall, so I'm going to be assessing that one in the spring.
Well, I'd be happy to share with you the template that I use, so you can see what I'm doing. If that's sure, what you would like.
Just email it to me. That would be delightful. Oh yeah, that's great. Okay, now, does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I was wondering, I really enjoyed the PowerPoint that you put together with the works cited and the documentation styles. And I was wondering if you have the new edition for MLA.
Yes, I do. And what's more, I have a new edition for APA too.
Excellent. Is there any way I can get those?
Yes. The fastest way would be just to email me. Do you have my email address?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay. And I will put it in let's see here. I'll put it in the comments. And then anyone who wants to who wants to email me can do that. Yes. And I will update those with the ACE people too. So they will put it on the ACE page in my peak on the college's website. So yeah, that stuff needs some updating. And anyone who wants the new MLA or the new APA, just ask. Okay. Excellent. Yes, I will do that. And Jim was asking if I could make that PowerPoint available because you could use it with your students. Definitely. So I'll send that to the ACE office and they will put it on the English page in my peak. And everybody should be able to get it there.
I found it really helpful. I found it really helpful showing the students exactly. I mean, I've been using your sample for a couple years now, and it really is quite helpful. I mean, the kids can actually see it, and I love the whole format that you have with the questions, kind of like quizzing the kid. It was incredible. I mean, really was helpful.
Well, now I'm thinking, oh no, does the new one have the question format?
I don't know. I
hope so. But if it doesn't, you can always adapt it for your own use to do what you want it to do. Yeah. And the new APA just started this year. It came out last October. And we didn't try to implement it in the fall because it was so new. We implemented it in the spring, and I do have presentations for that too. And I'll also make sure both MLA and APA have pretty nice website help. So I'll try to make sure I share those links too. And let me think. Something terrible happened though. I looked at Amazon.com for the MLA handbook and found out that they're planning a new one for next year. I can't believe that. I know, only 5 years. Couldn't you leave us alone a little bit longer? So next year, I don't know how that's going to go. It's projected to be published, I think, next summer. So for next semester, it won't be working yet. And I don't know what kind of changes they're anticipating. Jim, you look like you want to say something.
No, I was talking to my son there, but I just shared the document with you on your email. Do you have Google Docs by any chance?
Oh, I can probably download it from there.
Okay.
I don't really use Google Docs, but if I can't figure it out, I'll just reply.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Are we all good? Okay. Then I'm going to end the recorded portion of the meeting, and thank you very much for stopping in and listening. If there are any questions or concerns you have, use that email address and I'll be happy to talk to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I'm done recording. And Debbie, can I talk to you for a minute before everybody else leaves?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you all very much, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
lovely evening.
You too.
Keep well and have a nice holiday.
Stay safe.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Feel
Yes,
better,
thank you. You
Jeannine.
too.
Feel better.
Hey, Jeannine.
Yes.
Here, I'll show it to you real quick, just so you can get a quick preview. I'll share my screen with you real quick.
Okay, cool.
Oh, wait, no. Host disabled screen sharing. That's okay. You'll see it then when you get.
Did I really?
Yeah, it's okay.
I didn't mean to do that. I don't even know how I did that. Okay, wait. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
All right, let me try. Okay, good. All right, that worked.
There we go. All participants. All right.
Okay, real quick. So when I give them this template, it's already in MLA format for them, and they have to write in their critical school of thought that they're using. And then I just have it basically already kind of formatted for MLA. They have to replace all this. This is actually my way to check and see if they're actually doing the switching of this out, because you'd be surprised. You probably wouldn't be surprised. I've had some papers turned in that none of this has been changed. And I'm like, okay, you're not doing the formatting correctly, or you're not doing the citations correctly.
Yeah,
but then
this isn't the idea.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
At the bottom, this is the actual rubric that I'm using, and it is based on, it's basically the same points, deductions that you have, that you've used in the past before. But it's divided into content, documentation, and grammar and mechanics. So it takes a little bit of subjectivity out of it. But like I said, I sent you a copy. so that you can, you can look it over and see if there's anything you'd be able to
Thanks.
use. Okay?
I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay. Have a great
Yeah.
evening. Bye-bye. Okay, Debbie, how are we coming along with the idea of this recorded class?
Well, we're out. We're remote now, so there are no students there, and we're only Zooming for 30 minutes at a day for each class. So I don't really know what you're expecting to see. Like, can you tell me what you...
Okay, well, if a 30-minute Zoom would be fine. So are you going to meet your college class with a 30-minute Zoom class?
Yes.
At least, okay, that's fine. I just want to get an idea of what you're presenting to them of our college material. So pick a day when your Zoom class will be about something that relates to the college material part of the course, because you're teaching 110, right?
Right.
So you're doing 110, but you have a literature class running too. Am I right about that?
Correct.
Okay, so pick the English 110 part. Okay, so someday that you're doing English 110 material, just record your Zoom class. It's a lot easier than you think. You press the record button. You can either record it to your computer or to the cloud, and then you can set, basically, I usually use the cloud because why clutter up my computer? And Zoom will send you an email that has the link so that you can see it, and then it has the link so that I can see it, and a passcode that lets me get in to see it. Now, when you're doing the Zoom class, then it's going to be just you on the screen, right? You're not going to have the students on screen.
No, they'll be on screen.
So their privacy is completely protected. Okay. And think about it a minute too. Like if I were in your classroom, I'd see them.
Sure.
And I'm not going to be talking about what the students do or their names or any personal information. So the Zoom is just you, and I just get to see what you're presenting to the students. That's all that I need.
Absolutely. And my question is, so they wrote a comparison and contrast essay, a comparative essay on the difference between Burns' poem To a Mouse and Of Mice and Men. And
wow.
So we read the poem, they did a comparative analysis, they had to decide between block or point by point. And the only thing is that I didn't at this point make them cite. There was no citation in it because when I teach writing, I let them write first. And then because of the fact that it was just the two pieces, they didn't have to bring in any outside literature. They only had to look at the poem and the book. Is that enough for you to see? Or would you like to see them with something that's more, because right now we're doing F. Scott Fitzgerald's Bernice Bobs Her Hair. And in that, they have to do a thematic analysis of character or something, it's a theme in Bernice, and they do have to bring in at least two resources from that. But again, they're just in media.
Okay. Actually, I do not yet have to see any of the papers.
Okay.
That's going to come at the end of the year with the research paper. That's the only paper that I have to see. So you are going to have them use citations in the new one, right? And you said it, Bernice Bobs Her Hair.
Well, I'm going to be straight with you. They were supposed to use citations in Of Mice and Men. What was to happen is I write the first, we get the first draft in, and I use John Collins' writing method where we do that focus correction areas. We are teaching this is a 9th grade class. These are 9th graders.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. Yes. I've visited before. I visited Aspen Moss a couple of times.
Right. And so they're 9th graders. And so at this point, they're still, to me, getting their feet wet. So I let them write, and there are 3 focus correction areas for this paper were supposed to be. And I do the John Collins writing method where they had to have a viable thesis, and I taught them how to write a thesis. That had to be there. And then they had to be able, it needed to be extremely evident that I could see either block or point by point organization. And then they had to cite within the paragraph, they had to pull from the poem and from the book. And then, and so that I would be able to see that structure. And when you do John Collins, it's 20 points for your thesis. It's 20 points that I can see the visible structure, and it's 60 points that I can see your ins and outs. And John Collins was a method that we adopted. The thing is that you don't get a 10 out of 20. You get a 0
or a 20
or a 20. That's it. And if you want to take the 0, feel free. But if not, you have to fix. So that's Collins's method, and it's called a type 2 paper. And so they are absolutely forced to go back in and fix or take the 0.
Okay.
And
I get it.
A good number of them won't do that. And Collins was a writing program that I was introduced to 20 years ago with the superintendent of my school, Dr. Don Bailey. And when he sent me to this 4-day workshop in Pittsburgh on Black Friday over Thanksgiving weekend, I was so upset because I had little children at home, and I'm like, I want to be home. I absolutely changed the way that I taught writing from that moment on. Our school district never bought into Collins writing. 3 years ago, we got an instructional coach who came in and said, I'm going to teach you about John Collins writing. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. I've been doing this for 20 years. And a lot of teachers they don't like that, because like, how do you give them 100 points on a paper when you only graded 3 things? Because then what you do is you move that paper up a level. You say that was type 2. Now you did those 3 things and you got them right. Now let's put 3 more focus correction areas in there, like citation and a works cited page. And then you also have your non-negotiables. There would be 5 to 10 non-negotiables. For a 9th grade, like absolutely no use of I and you. And you come up with your own non-negotiables. And then of course, as you move that paper up to a level 5, where it's publishable, you've actually taken them through probably 15 different FCAs. But they take that.
Okay.
You take
I don't
that.
see anything wrong with using that method, but what
Right.
I need in your class is, all that I need is for you to be teaching something that relates to our college course. The thematic analysis isn't a Comp 1 paper.
Sure.
So I guess I'll have to wait for your next topic.
Are you looking for a research paper, like a research, like
No, but I need something that relates to something that's in the content of Comp 1. So when you look at that syllabus that you were sent,
right?
If you're covering a topic that's in that syllabus, that's what I want to see. So it can be a grammar lesson. It can be about organization.
Oh, heck.
It can be about, these sentences. It can be about the research paper, any phase of the project.
Well, we do
finding sources, doing the research, putting it together, taking notes, all of it.
We do. What I wanted to do with Mice and Men was Richard Lanham's paramedic method of conciseness, where you rip out the lard. It's called cut the lard. You look at the 5 steps of cutting out the passive voice, and you cut out the prepositions, and you cut out the you look at your
so are you planning an upcoming lesson on that?
Well, the thing is that we only have tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday, and then we're out for Thanksgiving. So the thing is that I could probably pull up those Mice and Men papers maybe between now and then in that 30-minute lesson and talk to them about cutting the lard. I don't know if you're familiar with Lanham. It changed the way that I wrote amazingly. No prepositions. Look at your prepositional phrases. You go through and you actually cut your paper apart and you cut out the lard. And that's what he calls it, to give it like a catchphrase.
You're reducing wordiness, basically.
That, and not only that too, but what you're doing is I combine that with John Collins sentence graphs, where you count the words in your sentences and you look at your sentences and you say, holy smokes, I have 6 15-word or higher sentences all in a row, and there's no punch with this power of a short sentence in there. It's not there.
So you're working on editing their papers with them in class?
Right. We can do that.
Okay.
If that's, yeah. Okay. So we can do that. So
that would be fine.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's check it out. And I'm just gonna have to check and see, because again, tomorrow the students have some meetings that they're in, because we just went out again, and they were not in live at all until today was their first day of synchronous. So we were asynchronous since last week. So now we're synchronous for 30-minute intervals today, we were today and tomorrow, and then Monday and Tuesday. Those
Well,
were,
let me just tell you that from my point of view, it makes no difference whether you're synchronous or asynchronous because I'm watching a recording.
okay. All right. Sounds
You
good.
know,
Yeah. So let us,
whatever you want to show me, it's
Sounds
okay because it's a recording. So,
yeah, so let me go on ahead and see if I can't just tuck that in Monday and then just send you the link to the recording. Does that sound good?
That would be ideal. That sounds great.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
I'll pick that in Monday and I'll tell them that we're just going to kind of take a break and that we're going to go on ahead and get the a little bit of editing on the mice and men paper, and then we'll talk about reducing the wordiness and the Lord and in a piece of writing. And then actually,
that sounds good.
Super beneficial because the next essay they're writing, the thematic essay, I definitely want them to watch wordiness and cutting the Lord and looking at those things because I'm a big stickler for that stuff.
Right, right.
Okay. All right. Well, I will be
so
in
that
touch
should
and
work
I'll
out
send you
well.
that. All right. So I can just email
Thank you
that.
very much, Deb.
I can email that video to you. I can just email the link to you.
Exactly. Yeah. All you have to do, copy and paste the link and the passcode and send it to me in an email.
You
and
got
you
it.
have my email address there. And in fact, I've emailed you, so you can even just make it a reply.
All right. Sounds great. All right. Thank you.
Does sound great. Thank you very much, Deb. It was nice talking to you.
Okay. Nice talking to you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.